Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Chai and Cabins. We just wrapped up an amazing conversation with Janelle, who, you guys, 80% cash on cash returns. I didn't think it could even be done, conceived. That is impressive. We talked about mermaids, wedding albums, and how to get 80%, 60% cash on cash returns. If I just sum up this conversation.
It was awesome. So she has these two really amazing properties and they're full of personality. And I think that was the biggest takeaway was really figuring out the personality of the home and then building off of that to create this like immersive guest experience. The Funky Flamingo and the Groovy Granny are Janelle's properties and they're so fun. So fun.
I really enjoyed it. And Jen, you and I saw each other last week in person, live. We were at a mastermind event and I had like an incredible time. And I feel like I've been on a high ever since I got back. Like just being in the vibration with like those people who have high energy and are high performance just like made me want to like level up and be like, well, let's go.
Yeah, it was actually my first boardroom event. Because I'm usually home with the kiddos and it was in Boston and it was amazing. I loved meeting people in person because you get to meet people online and talk with them on Facebook Messenger and things, but then actually getting to sit with them and like give them a hug and just chat was awesome. And yeah, just like you said, being around people that are doing even bigger and better things than you are was like awesome. So it was
We
great.
will do a special podcast that's just what happens in the boardroom if people are excited about like the inside the scenes, behind the curtain, whatever you want to call it. We'll do that. But for the meantime, please enjoy Janelle's podcast. If you guys have any recommendations on anyone else we should bring to the podcast, drop us a comment below or find me on Twitter at Chai and Cabins. And be sure to listen to the real end of this podcast where we actually go on to Instagram tips for properties, which I thought Janelle had some amazing ideas. I know I'm going to be implementing those. So make sure you stay till the end and hit that subscribe button. Enjoy, you guys. Enjoy, you guys. Welcome to Chai and Cabins, where we talk all things entrepreneurship, short-term rentals, real estate, and business. My name is Rashmi, like don't rush me, and it's my pleasure to welcome you onto this podcast. You would think I'd be a little bit better at tech. I actually want to talk about that. Like, this is like the perfect starting conversation. Like, this is one of the only businesses you can do that's flexible enough they can go pick up your kids at 2:30. I love that.
Yeah. I was listening. One of my favorite podcasts from you guys was the one with Rose, because we homeschool too. So I love her and relate to her a ton. So yeah,
And
it's all about
I think it's official
balance.
time we just start an STR for homeschooling company. And
You
just-
did?
No, I'm saying we should.
I was like, I'm in.
Everyone's like, let's do it.
Did you hear the excitement in my voice right there? Yeah. But my son is 15 and he is going to try a high school in the fall. It's music and tech. Like he got into a magnet type school. So I'm going to be the worst of both worlds. Like have to be somewhere on a schedule and have someone to amuse all day and get my work done. So check with me in like 6 months and I may be like done.
We'll check back with Janelle.
Yeah.
Janelle, I'm
Send help.
so excited to have you on the podcast today. It reminded me we met a few months ago, maybe over a year ago, at the friend's house. We had like a whole like STR mastermind talk, which was really fun. But I don't think we got a chance to talk like one-on-one and like get to know about you. And
I
I'm
don't think so.
on Instagram right now, if you guys like here, and I'm checking out Janelle's properties, and they're so cute. So like I want to start right off the bat with like, how do we do Instagram for properties? Because this is like a problem I have, and I cannot seem to figure it out. Like I am awful at social media.
Which part of it? Because there's so many parts of it that are hard. I'm not going to say I'm a master either.
These look awesome though.
Thank you.
No, I mean, yeah. Or do you want to start like kind of telling us how you got started? And then we're going to like definitely dive into this branding, the properties and guest experience, because I think you're the perfect person to speak to that.
Okay, awesome. Like all the way back, like first with real estate type stuff. Okay,
let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So my background is graphic design and communication design is what my degree is technically in. So right after school, I got a job at the coveted design in-house for Fossil watches in the DFW Metroplex. That's where all of us wanted to work. So I got to learn about, marketing, and that was way back when people were just figuring out cookies and how you could track buyer habits, how they went through the website and things like that. Like Facebook groups wasn't a thing yet. I don't even think they were doing Facebook ads. So it was a long time ago, still print, some web design, but started with that kind of background and then built a wedding photography business big enough to be able to quit my real full-time job and do wedding photography full-time. And then when I had kids, speaking of kids, a wedding photographer's life does not correlate well to a husband who has a W-2 and kids. So I chose, luckily we had the ability to make the choice, but I chose to stay home with them and just shut down the business. And that was fun for a while, no regrets, but my creativity, like it can't stay inside apparently. So I started putting that into houses in real estate without even realizing that. That was just where my outlet started going. So we started house hacking kind of by accident. We bought our first house before the kiddos were born. And then when they were older, we wanted to move closer to grandparents. So we sold that one in the middle of the recession and sold it, quickly for asking price. And then they came in and bought all our furniture too, because they liked what we had done with the space so much. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that's possible. And then now I get to go start again. And we were moving into a 1926 historic house. So, would have wanted totally different stuff anyway. So we just slowly started moving every year and a half, selling them at first and then just kind of moving up. And then eventually I talked my husband into keeping them as a rental. I'm like the big picture, crazy idea person. And he's the one that has to ease into it a little more. So we kind of check each other like that. So it took a while, talked him into it. And then, so we kept keeping rentals and moving. And that's kind of just how we built up. And then we were just going to start looking for a vacation rental property kind of close by because we are control freaks. And I needed to be able to get to this property because, I had to do everything myself. And then my uncle listed a house in Weeki Wachee, Florida for sale. That was his river weekend kind of house. And we had been there a few years ago to visit on vacation. I was like, this is the coolest place. There's like manatees out in the water. The water is like this gorgeous blue turquoise color. It's like vintage and kitschy town. There's the Weeki Wachee Mermaids that they built an underwater auditorium and they call themselves mermaids, but 90% of the time they aren't even wearing tails. They're just swimming around, but they have like breathing tubes and it's been around since I want to say the 50s. Like Elvis came and sang there and there's just all this. If kitschy was a place and a show, this is it. And it's just all so cool. And he's like, yeah, we're never going to sell. And I'm like, okay, if you do. So that is when he decided to sell it when we were thinking about it. So we jumped on it. And then we ended up packing up and moving out there. We thought maybe for 5 weeks we'd be able to renovate it. And we're talking like 15 years of renovations at this point, and we still cannot estimate our own time. Like everything's a day project. Everything is a day project. And we actually have a rule that we can't buy something a certain distance from Home Depot because my husband would die. Like it would take years to finish things. But so we ended up being there 5 months, long story short, living in it. It's 800 square feet. So it was 3 of us full time, my husband flying back and forth because he still has a W-2, a golden doodle, and 2 cats. And we did everything from scraping popcorn to actually painted the laminate flooring with a special floor paint. All of it. So we were like living on the porch or we were living only in 1 bedroom and there's only 1 bathroom. So when we needed to do our stuff in there, it was a mess, but it turned out fabulous and I love it. So I don't know. I kind of rambled for a second. So anything specific?
Yeah. What year was this?
That was 2021.
Okay. So pretty recent.
Yeah. So we jumped into it right at the right time. And I wasn't in I was in, long-term rental groups, that type of thing, but I was not in the short-term rental world yet. I don't know, I'm in like 8 million Facebook groups, but still when I start something and go down a new rabbit hole, I don't think to join the groups until I'm way into it. So I was just looking on my own, looking at other properties in the area. It has great, supply and demand balance because there's only so many properties on the river and the canal. So you can't build 8 million of them like you can out in Broken Bow or something. It's not going to keep going. So we recognized that. And that was one of the main things that had us jump in. And then from the branding perspective, my aunt is an artsy fartsy person just like me. So the house used to be brown and she came in and painted 2 colors of blue vertically on the siding with white stripes in between. And I loved it. Like it pops out in pictures. It's gorgeous. But the door was just that boring builder grade white door. So looking at the photos, the listing photos, I was trying to focus on what can we do with that door? And I realized this flamingo pink goes perfect. And that is just how the whole thing started. So it literally started with a color pink, the front door, thinking, the plastic flamingos that are in Florida and how kitschy they are and how kitschy the rest of the town is. So that, you can get away with that. In Texas, if I painted my house blue stripes, there would be an uproar, but you can get away with that in Florida. So I love it. So that is how it branched off. I didn't even really like flamingos. I did not like flamingos, but they weren't like something I was going to get over excited to see. And now I love them because I've built this whole immersive experience around the cottage.
So have you always been into design in general, or did this kind of just like spark that part?
This sparked it. I always loved anything artsy, I guess you could say. So to me, there isn't really that much of a difference between designing 2D on a brochure or a website and 3D. It's still about balance. It's still about negative space. It's still about color. It's still about where you want the person's eye to focus first and then follow through. All that is the same. It's just you're dealing with, also a floor plan and making sure things fit and are functional and stuff like that. So I think that's how it kind of just snuck in and I didn't really realize it. And then when the people wanted my furniture, I was like, oh yeah. And then when we started keeping the long-term rentals, we were able to get a little bit more rent every month, and not a lot, but maybe like $20 more. But the people who see 4 or 5 houses and this one, it costs $20 more. And the only reason I'm going to pay that $20 more is because of the space I get to live in. Those people have also been amazing tenants. We've not had, any long-term nightmare stories. And I really feel like that's part of it. Like we care about the space and then they care about it too. And so that worked out, but it's only one family at a time. Like one of our houses, the same people have been there for 8 years. And so I didn't fully realize it until I got my first 5-star review. And then I got feedback where kids were crying because they had to leave the house and go home. And I realized, oh my gosh, so I get to do this like 2 or 3 times a week and impact so many more families by creating this hub within a place they already wanted to go. Just a bonus. And that's how I got hooked.
That's amazing. Did you, so on your first property, I know your uncle was selling it, you guys bought it. Did you do any analysis like AirDNA, STR Insights, like anything like that? Or were you like, gut feel, this is going to work?
I did not know AirDNA was a thing. STR Insights wasn't out yet because I know Kenny and he was developing it later when I met him. So yeah, it was just looking. I know it's tagged as the enemy method, but that is just how I did. I even made the grave error of messaging some people on Verbo because I didn't know about the, have to respond quickly and them thinking they're getting a booking when that's the message pop up. And then it's just some crazy lady asking how good they do. But the people in the community were really nice and they answered me back. And that gave us a little bit more confidence in doing it. But yeah, it was scary as I was going to cuss. Can you cuss on a podcast? I don't know. It was really, really scary.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, like when we bought our first house, we were just out of college, dirt poor. It was the 0 down situation that, we were able to all do back then. And, you couldn't sleep and thought your life was going to end and you're stuck with this terrifying, expensive thing forever. So, and then it got easier and easier to buy the houses. But this one, it kind of started all over because it wasn't a guaranteed income. Yeah. So we lucked out and it does really, really good. Somebody who is much better than numbers calculated my cash on cash return when I was running it the first year. And he said it was going to be like 85%. So we did good. Like we did enough research to do it. But yeah, we couldn't repeat that every time, I think. So we got hooked. And then like 2 months later, I was like, I'm just going to start looking at one of the areas we were going to buy in the first place about an hour from us and found a house that, it was that perfect scenario where it smelled really bad and it needed updates and had been ignored. So it was just a little bit too much for a homeowner to want to take on and then not cheap enough for somebody to come in and flip it. So we were able to sneak in there and still get it for a really good price. So we started all over again. And then it does really good, but I don't know, I think it's at like 60% or 50% cash on cash return, which I know is still really good, but I was expecting it to be, funky flamingo all around. But
That's amazing. So you're taking like these properties that basically need like gut level rehab, and then like full on, and then is that what's projecting your cash on cash out that high? Like that's like
I think that and we have done a lot of the work ourselves. And one of my other special talents is thrifting really affordable furniture. So for Funky Flamingo is 2 bedroom, 1 bath, 1 living area, covered patio situation, and all in with the reno, we only spent 20 grand.
what? Do you
Yeah,
wanna go
because I mean, every dollar not spent was a tear coming down my face, let me tell you. But that's like the only way we could do it. Like we're normal people. We drove paid off cars for years. We don't have a ton of money sitting there from family. So that is the way we could do it. And then now we are to the point where we're getting older and it hurts. Like our muscles get tired. So we are really trying to work on delegating that and building it up and systemizing it where we can repeat it, because that, like, you can't do that every month. I mean, one took us 5 months and we were in a place where we could do that with the kids, but that doesn't continue forever. So I don't know, but did I actually answer your question? I feel like I did not.
I was gonna ask kind of okay, you said it's the Funky Flamingo.
Yes.
That's the theme of the Florida house.
Yes. Yes.
I know you're big into the guest experience and providing like just a really cool experience for people. And you mentioned being immersive. Like, what are some of the things that you've done at the Funky Flamingo to really enhance the guest experience?
All the way of thinking through like how they are going to use the space, right? Like they're going to want to sit outside, putting up hammocks, comfortable furniture. One of the big things is kind of standard that everybody has kayaks for guests to use. So we went above and beyond that and got one of the clear kayaks so you can see the manatees swim underneath you. And it has, I spent a lot of time using my core background on building a brand for the property. So from the moment they look at the pictures to the minute they get their follow-up message, it is the same personality coming through. And I know I'm a weirdo, but I feel like houses and areas have personalities, and we just have to sit and figure out what that space is. So for Funky, it was really easy. There's like vintage mermaids, there's manatees, like what more do you need? If you give someone a clean, basic space and they get to see a manatee and a baby manatee swim by them, they're going to have a great time. So if I elevate that up and make sure my house matches that, then that's something they just go home and tell everybody about. So then that was the goal. So like the tone and the messaging will say things like, it's amazing. The tone and the wording matches the funkiness of it. The logo is it's not corporate. It's not refined. It's very hand done. And all of that is subliminally setting the tone for how they're going to feel when they get into the space. And then the touch stay guide has a lot of branding. It has fun things to do, pictures and graphics that match, because they'll see that before, right? And then when we get there, I have more of a lookbook guide that isn't, 500 don't do this and don't do that and make sure you wash the dishes. It is trying to enhance their experience and get them more excited about their stay. Every detail like that, like the hooks, some of the hooks are flamingo heads, so you can go crazy in limited doses, right? Although a guest did tell me they counted how many flamingos are in the house, and they said over 100. And my awesome cleaning crew, I was texting them about that, and they were like, well, you do have flamingos on the sheets. Maybe they counted those. And I'm like, okay, that makes me feel a little bit better, because otherwise I don't know how there's 100. But like I took and it's taking something normal and enhancing it a little bit. So a lot of people in Florida have those plastic flamingos. That's what I built it around. And they have like 2 of them in the middle of their whole flower bed. Like that's not impactful. So I got different sizes and different shapes and painted them. Like one is painted like a cow, one, just has designs on it. Because my aunt and uncle and grandma live in that area, we actually did a flamingo painting party while we were renovating, and I took it over to their house and we all painted like 5 or 10 flamingos. So that kind of thing, when you group things together and you elevate them a little bit, it makes it really special.
I love that. You have so many ideas. I like never think beyond like my four walls, and I'm like, I like absolutely love all of this.
Yeah.
Any tips for somebody who's not like you for design, like gifting, like it's not something I can like I'm born with, right? So I'm just like, this is so cool.
I think like think about why you or why your target person is drawn to the space, drawn to the area, and then drawn to your property, and accentuate that, go with that. So the Texas property is called Groovy Granny. And that one, the house had a lot of character that I could build off of, but there aren't manatees outside. So I went a little crazier with the branding and creating this whole space that I wanted to feel like how families feel when they go visit their grandparents on the weekend. You know, you're escaping and it's comfort. And that is what I built it around. But I don't say comfort, you know, I call it groovy grannies, and I use terms from the 70s, and I purchase things in the house that are like someone who is grandma age would have collected over the years, kind of starting in the 70s when she was buying her own things. But the look and the vibe of just an artsy lady who now loves her grandkids more than anything else. So adding that in, but making it relevant. Like she likes Texas things. Like she has some Texas stuff in there because everybody Texan is proud of themselves. She likes Dr. Pepper, so she leaves Dr. Pepper for her guests, that kind of thing. I leave a little note that says, Groovy Granny didn't want you to be hungry, because everybody knows grannies try to feed you, right? So she didn't want you to be hungry. So there's some Dr. Pepper in the fridge and some popcorn. And then at our house, we have an acre. So we have chickens that after I spent months, because we repeated our same mistake, did not learn. So I spent months down an hour away renovating that property. And then when I came back home and saw my chickens after a while, I was like, oh, this is the color palette that I picked for the house. So I leave eggs in the fridge. And then on the note, I say the Dr. Pepper, the popcorn, and some backyard butt nuggets for you. And people just love that. And it costs me a couple bucks, whatever it costs to get chicken feed. Or when they go on strike, then I have to go buy eggs from the store and fake it. But
I like love all of this. How do you handle cleaner coordination with little items like the Dr. Pepper, the eggs? Are you doing that yourself? Do you just
that goes back to my original point that I never made. So we ended up buying a house 18 hours away, not 3 hours. And I think that actually worked out for the best, because I can't come over all of the time, right? So the guest gifts and the things that we leave there are much more streamlined and simplified. Like the state park doesn't allow any kind of disposable packaging when you kayak up the river. So you're supposed to have like a reusable water bottle or the reusable Ziplocs. So we leave a water bottle, and then they can just pull those out of the shed, or the brochure kind of coloring book guidebooks that we leave, they can just pull those out. So, and I have an amazing crew, and they have a system. Like they showed me how it should be run. So that has helped me everywhere else. I really lucked out with them, and they are really smart because all the houses are within a few miles of each other. So they kind of have systemized it. Like one person comes in and gets laundry. One person is going to be doing the cleaning. So it has been amazing. And then the one that's only an hour away has been much more of a nightmare with back end stuff. That's partly because that one has a pool over leaves, over some trees. And we don't want to totally cut the trees down because, like, you know, in Texas in the summer, eventually it's like you're swimming in almost boiling water. So the shade really helps with that. So we don't want to totally cut it, but that isn't fun. So there's always like much more upkeep with the pool. And then finding a good crew here was harder, but we have found someone. So I think it's about finding the right people and then trusting them to do it.
Is your second property a little bit bigger? You said the first one was 800 square feet. Is the second one
Yes.
big?
Yeah. The second one's 4 bedrooms and about 2,600 square feet, I think. Yeah, 2 bathrooms.
Very cool.
So that one, we also did similar, like it had old pink carpet. It was built in the 70s, and then it has a little bit of a mid-century Spanish vibe. And I know that those aren't two things people normally think of together, but that is just like the feeling I had walking around that house. So when it was built, it had a lot of character, and then people came back in and made it 1990s or 1980s and added like pink carpet in the bathroom, and probably took out like original cool cabinets and put in 90s cabinets. So we renovated that. And I think of it also as the experience. So for instance, if we were going to come renovate this property to flip it or even be a long-term rental, it has that like window into the kitchen that you can see from the living room. You know, it's like not very big. It's not open. I would have totally ripped that out and, you know, made a bar island area to really open that up. But because I was going for the 1970s look, I left it, and I even put a vintage phone right there, and that's where I put the guest book, so it looks kind of like it would. And I put a 1976 calendar up on the wall. As I'm going around thrifting, I'm trying to find the calendar for the year where the dates match up to what it actually is this year. But it cracks me up because guests flip it. Like, it is always on the right month, and it's been up for like a while now. I had the idea to actually connect phone service and add an answering machine, because my kids, actually, when we were over at my aunt and uncle's house in the Florida property, we were all sitting out on the lanai and the phone rang and nobody got up to get it. And then we heard, you know, "Hi, you've reached the Wheelers, leave your message." And my kids are like, what is this voice in the air? And then the person started leaving the message, and their minds were like blown. And I had never thought that that is something they have never experienced in their life. And we don't experience that anymore. You know, it just slow faded. I don't even know the last time I thought of not wanting an answering machine message to be playing out loud, because you don't know what the person is going to say. So I thought about connecting the phone line and having people call and leave messages to Granny. I think that would be really fun. I haven't done it yet. Maybe now that I said it out loud, I'll be accountable, because I leave the guest book and kids leave the coolest messages. Like the one I saw just recently, we went down to check on it. It was like, "I love this house. The kitchen reminds me of my Mimi." So that is the whole point. Like, I was like, mic drop, done, you know.
Mic drop. I love it.
Yeah.
One question I have, and I'm just like curious because I had this personal experience this week, so I just want to ask you guys what you think. Do you find the properties that are like in your market, in your neighborhood, we don't systemize as well as like my properties out of state? Like that, those one run well. I had one property in town. I have a couple in where I live, and we had a guest leave. Like, it was a midterm booking. They left without telling us, and like another guest booked like less than 24 hours for next day check-in. So I was scrambling. I was going out there to do this, and I was like, I never leave my office. What is this world? And I was like, do I just not systemize? Because like it's so close to me. And I'm like, I can fix this? And I'm like, there, I'm like calling people. But if it was like out of state, I would just be like, well, like figure it out, you know, or like I would have systems in place.
I think it's a mix of that and maybe our just natural instinct to fix things when we can. Like, I would rather not bother someone sometimes if I could do it, but we can't do that at scale, right? So I'm saying these things out loud, but I am not listening to myself.
Same. I literally wasn't. Oh, Wednesdays are my day where I have a sitter and I get to do my computer work. I literally was at 3 properties today doing things and used up all of my time. So yes, I totally know where you're coming from.
Yeah, I was like, we need to sell everything, and that's like driving distance, walking distance, whatever. Sell all of it.
Yeah, buy it 18 hours away. That's that's the secret.
So Jen and I were at the boardroom last week. So Mike Sjogren has an event. We're in his mastermind, and he literally has a method called Casper, right? Which is like build your life around how you want to live, and like what's important to you. And I was kind of like going back to that. I was like, I got into this to have time freedom. Like I could do a lot of things to make money, but like this is about time freedom and like being able to take time off and still be making money and like have freedom, right? So I was just saying, I was like, why am I at this property? I was like, oh my God. But
One
like,
thing I took a seminar with him a couple years ago, and he was one of the first people to say how, like, when you start outsourcing things, you're helping those people. Like, we're actually giving other people jobs. So it's okay, you know, like You have to do it if you're going to grow, and you are helping other people, because not everybody wants to run a business. And I don't know, that sat with me. And so like one small thing I have done is I hate cooking. I'm like the opposite of the housewife. I would have died in the 50s. I think I don't know what would have happened. So and my husband is a chef, in full irony, but he has a corporate, yeah, he has a corporate job. So when he comes home, it used to be too late. Like the kids would already need to be in bed almost, so he didn't have time. And then, he's just gone all day and he doesn't want to cook either. So we would take turns on it. But I found a local lady who has systemized and streamlined dinners. So a couple nights a week, she makes them in a kitchen, like an industrial kitchen, not like her own kitchen, and then drives them around and drops them. So she'll leave them in a cooler for you, or like in a garage fridge if you have it. And so I don't know, it was just like one baby step into buying back my time, because then I followed up and I read that book, and it sat really deep with me. Like little baby steps where it's not a huge commitment, and it's not like I'm gonna have to fire someone if bookings go bad and then I've messed up their life. So I don't know, just pick something small and do it.
I think the other thing is I love hiring people who are better than me. And I guarantee you 99% of people are better than me at most things, like cooking, cleaning, revenue management. I mean, like anything. Like I'm not the expert, and I can't be like, it's not possible for the human mind to be good at everything. So
Right.
I would much rather hire people who love what they do, pay them well, and make my life a lot easier. Like it's so much easier to live that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. There's people who actually like cleaning, and that is just blows my mind. Like I almost don't believe it. Same with accounting. I just can't fathom it. But I know there's a lot of people who are not walking around houses thinking that they have personalities and characters. So it
Yeah,
all
one
evens
of the
out.
things,
We all need different, to make everything work. We need it like that.
yeah, like
Yeah.
my Shogun got on. Yeah, he inspired me to like go out and hire a housekeeper who comes like bi-weekly, and she's so like, and she was here yesterday. Yeah, she's so good. She took like, I have water bottles next to my bed. She took all of them, like all the reusable ones. She takes all of them, washes them out for me, puts them on the dryer, then fills it up and makes sure it's like back on my but like it's such a small detail, like so small, but it like totally made my day. Like I
Yeah.
was like, this is so amazing. Like I just had goosebumps talking about it, but it's the little like people, like she's like, I love doing this. Like it's all about hospitality. And I'm like, of course I'd rather pay her, because if I do it, I'm gonna be like grumpy, I'll forget the bottle downstairs. I'll never
Mhm.
It's true.
We had one house with stairs and I almost died. We had like, it's when our kids were like about your age, your kids' age, Jen. Like we had a brush upstairs, we had a brush downstairs. That was rough.
Yeah, we have the single level now, but yeah, that would be crazy. I think my big takeaway too from the boardroom was delegating. So this May is like my month to really just get rid of stuff off of my plate and help do that. But I always forget about the like the house stuff that you can offload, right? Because I'm like, I think it's such a big part of my identity for the last 8 years. So I'm like, well, no, I'm supposed to be doing this still, but
Yes.
no,
We
hey,
feel the
someone
guilt. Yes.
yes, the guilt of
So
not
actually
doing
in
it.
Mike Sjogren's workshop, that same one I mentioned before, he had everybody write down, like he paused the thing and he had everybody write down what they have to do all of the time and like doing the least. And he didn't say work related, but that's what we were there talking about, right? And so everybody else is writing stuff down or talking about how they hate doing finances. And literally everything on my list was like laundry, cooking, cleaning, all of the stuff that if it's on repeat in the same, my brain is just not doing. And it took a lot for me to realize that. Like it took until I was 40.
Yeah.
I just thought something was wrong with me, but my brain doesn't work like that. And that is okay. But I would rather do anything STR related, design related than the dishes again. So I don't know. It was a very revolutionary moment for me because of the following guilt, that we have to think that we are supposed to be doing all of that. I don't know. I read something recently that hundreds of years ago, like everybody did not cook their own dinner.
Mhm.
It was systemized, and you would grab something on the way home and it was fresh and it was priced well because they were able to batch it and get it at a lower price. And so there wasn't someone spending 2 hours a day cooking in every house, maybe just one person for a block. And I don't know, I feel like we are supposed to be living up to these old standards, and then those weren't even the standards, but we don't know.
I think as women, we think about this a lot more. I know my husband isn't having conversations about laundry and house cleaning. Like, I think high performing women tend to think about this a lot more in general, because you have to manage the house and W2 or entrepreneurship and trying to like merge those together. And something you said about guilt, I have a mindset coach, and my mindset coach is like helping me work through it. But I deal with a lot of guilt that I didn't even know I had. But she told me
What gives you the most guilt? Like a specific task or all of it?
I deal with being a brown woman in business. Like, I feel guilty that like I get to work from anywhere. I get to like have this life. Like, I just like have these like feelings about it. And I didn't even know, like, subconsciously. But the first thing she told me about guilt was guilt is the second lowest vibration. It's one level above suicide. And I was like, that was strong. Like, that like made an impact, because like I was like, oh, like I feel guilty about this. And she's like, yeah, you better get rid of that guilt, like right off the bat. And I was like, that put in perspective. Like, she's like, it's holding you down. She's like, it is holding you down, and you need to Jen, I was telling Janelle about like guilt is the second lowest vibration. And I learned that from Dave. And like it's like one level above suicide. And I was like, that is like,
Where's like grief?
I didn't ask her. I was still dealing with guilt. we're still
I'm just curious now. I'm gonna have to go down that rabbit hole later. I'll let you guys know.
Yeah.
Oh my
But that's
gosh.
really interesting. It kind of sounds like you have, it's like similar to survivor's guilt, but it's just success guilt.
Yeah, it's part success guilt, it's part being women in business. Part of it is, you know, like, I mean, with COVID, like Airbnb had like this huge like bubble and pop, and then like, you know, in the market, especially in 23, you were hearing like people taking a nosedive on like their bookings, their properties. And I was like, we're doing fine, like we're good. And like, I felt guilty about that. I'm like, well, why am I doing good and everyone else isn't, right? Like, could I just be a better performer? Could I just be better at managing properties, which I am, but I felt guilty about that. And I think there's lots of women who are very successful who feel guilty about these things. And like, it like messes with you subconsciously, and you're more hesitant to take decisions to move forward. And like, it was
like even what you just said, why I feel like men would just be like, yes, I am better. And I don't want to stereotype like that, but I really feel like there is a different, like the way we are raised just subconsciously, like women are supposed to, even if we feel that it's true, like something you said, you guys said at the beginning of Rose's podcast, one of you said, Rose, you're a superhero. And she was like, yes, I am. Like 99% of women would have been like, it's no big deal. But, you know, she owned it and she took it, and that's fabulous. And I love it. So we all need to get to that, but it's so hard.
It is hard. It is hard. I was thinking that earlier. I was like, I'm still such a people pleaser. Just like, it's just, I'm 37. And I'm like, why am I still a people? Why do I still really care what people think? Why?
I don't know. I heard after it happened to me, I heard fuck it 40 is a thing. And so I feel like you might be getting close to that, where you realize that it is happening and then you're like, I'm not doing this anymore. And
yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Can we just start that 2 years early? Yeah.
So I can't let you leave this podcast without talking about social media, because I am selfish.
Okay.
And I need to get my social media game up this year. It's on the books. I need to get my properties on social media and accounts. Let's talk, like, how do I use social media to genuinely do the only thing I want, which is get more bookings?
Okay, so I'll tell you what I did, and I don't know that it is the right way. Definitely not the only way, but because I have the photography and design background, while I was at the properties, I was taking photos and videos the whole time. So if you're just starting from scratch, I would say go stay or hire a content creator to go do the same, because we are not selling 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2,000 square feet. We are selling an experience and the feeling of being in the space, right? So the more you can show that, the better off you're going to be. And I know there's there's wars about, you know, having people in photos and not having people in photos. And there's such a huge difference between real estate photography, whose whole job is to show as much of the house as possible in a photo. That's why it's so wide angle, and to put it in its best light, because it's a low stakes situation. The potential buyers are going to come out and then they will decide if they're going to spend their money. But for us, we are trying to give an accurate representation of everything, good or bad, and evoke emotion at the same time. So it's just a completely different skill set of pictures, but the trend right now and what people want to see is real. They don't want to see something on social media, which is different than the listing photos. The listing photos should look very polished and well lit and just perfection. Like we're going for Architectural Digest and Better Homes and Gardens, and think of it as more, I think of my listing as a wedding album, honestly. That's how I kind of started to piece together how all these weird aspects of my life go together, because as a wedding photographer, you're telling the story of the whole wedding day in that album. And so every picture isn't like us right now, framed from this perspective, you know, the top third of the body looking at the camera. 100 of those would be so boring. That's why magazines aren't like that. That's why ads aren't like that. Like if you watch an ad or something on TV, it's changing angles, it's changing something every 2 to 3 seconds, because that's how bored we get. So if you're looking through a whole listing of photos and everything is the same style of exactly the same shot, that's boring. So in a wedding album, you have scene setters. So they're like the whole space pulled out, maybe the building at night. And then you have the detail shots. And I don't know, in a 10-hour wedding, I probably spent a good hour and a half on detail shots, like the shoes, you know, you hang out the dress, you get the flowers in this light, you get the flowers in that light, you get the flowers with the people blurred out in the background. All of this you can come in. And then with the bride and groom, you want ones of them looking at the camera, you want one of them getting the emotion. And so when all of that is laid out together, it tells that whole story. So that's what I am trying to do with listing photos a little bit, and then for sure on social media. So the story we're telling is what will they experience while they're at my property, and then what can they experience in the surrounding area. So that is what I try to do. And just with my phone, like my camera, thousands of dollars of camera equipment and lenses, and I just use this to get the social media stuff. So I don't buy new phones, I buy new cameras when they come out. That is my very important distinction for spending this much on Apple products regularly. But if you are evoking emotion and showing people doing things or showing real stuff, then people are going to relate to that. And then kind of I do the pillar thing that everybody talks about. So it is like trying to get guest reviews or guest feedback, good things about the house, amenities, and then the area. And then spreading it a little more. For both of them, I've started to talk about what could be a day trip. And the Texas ones is easy because we go on things that could be a day trip to Granbury all the time. But then when we go to Florida, I do the same thing. And because if someone is searching like Orlando and I have a post about going to Disney, that can possibly pop up, but they didn't know, they sure as heck didn't know I existed. And they more than likely didn't know WikiWatchy existed because nobody knows that. So that made me try to really think outside the box and expand, because there's not very many people putting in WikiWatchy Florida for a vacation idea, right? But they might be putting Tampa or they might be putting Disney. And we have a lot of people who go to Disney and then we'll do funky at the beginning or the end, that kind of thing. So think a little bit bigger than your bubble and start posting about that and just making sure you're writing so that the algorithm can pick up on that. And then funky, we've had a few influencers come and that has made a huge difference.
I have one question and I want to hit influence. Yep. When you say writing, do you mean like writing a blog post? Am I email marketing? Is it just my caption on Instagram? Like what is
the caption? Yeah. So it is like, there's all the debate about hashtags right now. So I'm still putting them on there. I don't know, but it's reading it like Google has been doing for years now. So if you are spending a whole bunch of time talking about the beach and then you're tagging the beach that you're talking about, and then also adding a few relevant hashtags, then Instagram is knowing what you're talking about and can start to figure out who to push that to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And then
before influencers, Sorry, before influencers, how are you planning out your content and creating the content aside from the videos and the pictures? Like, that's the struggle I have is, I mean, I have all these photographs, right? And I do have some video of properties, but then I'm like, okay, now what do I, what do I do? You know?
Well, it gets easier after you go for a while because you can start to repost what performed well. So for like videos, I'll use CapCut, and it's so easy to flip videos around or to just make a new cover image so that if you're looking through the reel, they don't really look the same. But I think the stats are like 1 to 3% of your followers actually see your stuff. So that's actually why I had a huge problem getting into social media. I avoided it like the plague. I avoided Instagram because as an old photographer, I was worried I'd get really addicted. But then when I started the businesses, I knew that that would be a great platform for it. But it's really hard as an artist and a designer to spend time on something and then know 5 people saw it. Like that is not a good return on my time. So once I realized that they aren't seeing it, and someone, I forgot who said it, but someone big in the whole social media field said people are used to seeing things again and they like the comfort of that. Like we want to know what to expect. There's this whole story with, do you guys remember Blue's Clues when y'all were younger? Okay. I was too old to actually watch the show, but I remember the concept of it. And apparently they were trying to compete with Sesame Street, I think it was, and didn't have the budget to do one new show 5 days a week, but they wanted to hold that time slot. So completely by accident, they decided to just play the same episode every day for a week. And they realized that their ratings were going through the roof because these kids loved knowing the answer and they loved knowing what was going to come next. And so they would watch it every day. And by the end of the week, they would know what was coming. They would have learned whatever lesson was hidden in there, and whatever channel, is that like PBS, like was
Nickelodeon.
doing great. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was doing great. And they only had to make the show once. And so when I heard that, I was like, okay, I get it. Like it is just human nature to want that comfort of knowing what to expect. So,
It's like
and side
watching
note, I think that's a huge problem with being against Airbnb and like hotels, because it is our nature to want to know. And there's so much unknown with what you're going to get in an Airbnb. So that's why I'm really excited about the hospitable host like certification and ambassador program, because I think our industry needs that so that we can get the people who want routine as well as the people who are looking for adventure. I don't know, tangent.
No, I love it. I love all of it. I was gonna say it's like watching your favorite movie. Like I can watch my favorite movie 100 times and I know exactly what happens, like scene by websites.
And why do we do that? It's like a comfort thing. Yeah.
So
Yeah, but how are you feeling? Sorry,
I didn't actually answer your question. So in the perfect world, you would have a month or 2 of content. Sit down, do it. Blocking really does make a difference. Just like don't do one a day. And then put all of those up and then see what does really well and just make slight changes to the ones you've already done and repost them. So you can have evergreen content that's good forever. So there'll be like things about your house that don't change. And then if you throw in something that is relevant, maybe it's an event that's going on, or once I figured out it's really easy to share to your story about another local business who posted something, like that's 3 seconds of my time and I can do that. And at first, like from a art perspective, like just resharing something that isn't even yours is like a huge no. So when I finally realized, no, that's what social media is all about. Like they get recognition and they might get some clicks. So they want you to share your thing. I don't know. That broke it down. So yeah, in the perfect world, you'll just batch all of your content while you're there, get whatever, and then go home, edit it or outsource it to somebody, and then post 3-ish times a week is what I try to do. And it is a lot because you also have to, like, I can go down so many rabbit holes with this. You are like, how much you're giving out is just as important as what you are posting on Instagram. So the people who use a scheduler and their scheduler just sends it out 3 times a week and they never even sign into Instagram, like there's almost 0 chance they're going to grow, especially if their property isn't something unique. So you have to be going on there and posting where your target people are at and be leaving helpful comments. And like I recently read that Instagram is rewarding people for using Threads, their spinoff for what's it called. So I signed on to that and I'm trying to post a couple times a week. So it takes time. So it isn't free because it takes time, but it's just balancing that out of, is it worth it? And I think that it is, because it gives us the know, like, and trust if you're trying to book direct. So one thing I have totally slacked on is direct booking sites. So I've just been sending people to Airbnb, but I'm working on those and then we'll have them up soon. So I totally get all the scams that are out there, right? So you're just going to log on my site, not know who I am, and give me a couple $1,000s. But if it's connecting from Instagram that has people interacting and my face is on there, I avoided my face on the internet for so long. Like, who would want to watch me talk? But you know, they say videos with people perform like 80% better. So I was like, I just got to get over it and do it. So I've started doing it a little bit on Funky, and then I'm gonna add it in Groovy. Like, Groovy is an hour away and I still don't have as much content of the actual like house, because I'm always doing chores when I'm down there, not in vacation mode. So I don't know. Long story to say, it's a lot of little things, I think, and you just have to figure out what works and how much time you want to spend on it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, Rashmi. I keep interrupting you.
I have so many questions. I have like 500 more questions now from like this one conversation. Jen, to answer your question, I'm like the 80-20 person, but I'm like 10, 80, and then 10%. So I'll do the 10% of the shooting, like batch content. Then I give it to my virtual assistant. She does the other 80%, putting the reels together, making sure they look good, caption, this and that. I'll review the last 10%, make sure it looks good before it gets posted. And then we're both on the account, interacting with travel influencers. We're on the account talking to guests, so then we go on the back end and things. So
Yeah,
the
and that's
80%,
the one
like a lot of
people
work.
forget that.
Yeah, the 80% just takes out a lot of like the editing and this, like, which I don't like to do anyways.
Yeah.
But it gives me back my time.
But even like figuring out, because I'm looking at some Janelle's, right, and like my toxic trait, like there, I know like some of these are reels that other people are doing as well, and so I kind of get stuck at like, I don't even know what do I caption with, like what do I put on my, like, just, and it's just makes me like paralysis instead of just doing it, because there's so many options, I guess.
Okay, so
is there a strategy for going about that?
yes, art is all about inspiration. Like, you have to be looking at what other people are doing. That's why there's like artist retreats and museums in general. Like, it is okay to look at what other people are doing and then adapt it to you. So a long time ago, we were just looking at pictures on walls, but now we can have a good idea of the results just by looking at the feedback that these accounts have. So if something has spread and has a couple thousand likes and a lot of comments, then why? Was it the hook? Was it the headline? Was it the visual photography? Like, what do you think made that work, and how can you get it to work for your property? And a lot of it is just throwing stuff out and seeing what works. Like, there was one, I think it had like 200,000 likes, and I can't remember what the hook was, but it was a catchy line, and I had a way to adapt it to my property easily, and in my opinion, it was just as good. So I adapted it, I added my own footage, and it like totally flopped. And why? I don't know. Like, and so it's a huge experiment. And then one I put recently, it took like 10 seconds. I don't even think it's designed well, in my opinion. Like, I would not ever send this to print. It's the first one that's pinned on Funky Flamingo's page. I'll leave it there for a while, so if people are listening, they can go look at it. But it says, "This is your happy place." And then it is just a carousel of some of the pictures. And I can't figure out if it is the headline, like it is evoking that emotion of "this is your happy place," or if it might be because you do kind of see the next picture, so you want to scroll to see what's going. But that would explain like a lot of views, but that one got shared like 10 times more than any of my other posts that I have spent forever editing and, all of that. And so I don't know, but you have to do it a few times so you can notice those patterns. So that's where I'm at right now.
Okay. So follow Janelle. do what she's doing.
For what to do or what not to do, we'll see.
I loved it. I was looking through. I think the reason it did well is it's so personal. I'm like, this is my happy place. So like I want to look more like it's curious, but it's authentic. I think people are looking
It's such
for
an easy tagline. Like that would not be one you would pay a ad agency like millions of dollars for, you would think, but it worked.
I think that's all people are looking for is the human connection.
Yeah. Especially now when everything is so AI. Like I saw another person post recently that he was frustrated that he created like a freebie and gave out free information and no one messaged him back to say thank you. And it's to the point where I assume if I enter a funnel, at every point it is an automation and it isn't even a real person. So yeah, like I think that is the future, is looking real and not being perfect, because AI is trying to make everything hoity-toity and perfect.
One of the things I'm on real estate Twitter. I just like being on there, and I have like a Twitter coach, and he was like, sometimes you have to do the things that don't scale and be personable and reach out to people to make, what you call super fans, like people who really enjoy with you. So like I write my own content, I respond to everything that comes in.
Yeah.
So like it's just my like, and it's not scalable, and like I know that, but it's important enough to me, and this is where I make my connection. So I just spend the time to do it.
Yeah. Not to bring Taylor Swift into like everything, but they say that's how she was so successful, is because that was her approach. When she would stand there and sign everyone's autograph when she had the time to do that, because they took the time to come see her. So it wasn't even like a manipulation thing. It was she really wanted to give back to the people who took the time to come see her. And so now she is not responding to everyone, but it just snowballed enough that it's okay for even an assistant to give a response.
You mentioned something about hospitable hosts. Do you want to talk a little bit about what a hospitable host is, being one, and then we'll talk about how people can get in touch with you.
Hospitable Hosts is an amazing trilogy of books. Now there's 3 of them out that's focused on the hospitality side of hosting, because I think real estate is so black and white and boring and analytical most of the time. That's how people kind of jump into it for another just business decision or asset. But once you're there, you realize it is a hospitality business and you are affecting people's lives. So like going back to weddings way back, it was the most important day for those people at that time. Like a mistake was catastrophic. One of the weddings, all of the weddings we did overseas, you couldn't like upload hundreds of gigs to a Google Drive at that point when I was doing it. So I would have to like back up my memory cards onto 2 things, and I would leave one hard drive at my hotel, and I would literally carry my memory cards around with me everywhere, and then had a 3rd set and I mailed them home. Like triplicate backup, just because it would be devastating to lose all of that. So I think vacations are like that for a lot of people. It's such a huge expense and there's so much pressure to have fun in this certain set of days that everything we can do can help them make or break that. And so I kind of think of it as just as important as those weddings way back. And I forgot what I'm talking about. What are we talking about? Oh, okay. Yeah. So Hospitable Host focuses on that. Jody Sterling had the idea to start these books, and then it features, I think, what do you think, Jen, about like 50 to 50 authors in each volume?
Yeah,
kind of telling their stories. Yeah. So, and then now she's spreading it into more amazing things. So she's going to have a online course, and I get to talk about hospitality in design and just thinking of it from that angle, like things like hooks or lighting outside when it's dark, the little things that a designer should think through to help make that hospitable experience for guests when they get there. So I'm excited to work on my little module, but she's launching things like that, and then actual certification after you've taken the classes. And I think she said there's even projects and maybe having to prove what you have in your space so that eventually it will have a name for itself, and potential guests will know that if they get a hospitable host property, that there will be clean sheets. We're talking basic stuff here, but things that a lot of Airbnb hosts don't do, and that turns off a lot of people from her industry as a whole. So we're trying to bring the whole industry up.
Or even having sheets. I was talking to somebody yesterday and they're like, "Did I provide sheets?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "No one else does in my market." I'm like, "Okay, good. You can stand out because you provide sheets." Like, good job.
What market is that?
I forgot which market there were. I talked to somebody. I had like 6 calls yesterday. I forgot, but there's a lot of markets where like if you book at like a campground, they'll be like you have to bring your own sheets. If you book at big lodges that are that run retreats, I've gone to them. I forgot where I went to in middle school, but like you have to bring your own sheets. It's completely normal. And I was
Yeah,
like,
I don't, there's too much to pack already.
Yeah.
yeah.
My friend just got back from Florida and her condo didn't have hand soap, toilet paper, paper towels. They had nothing on the beach in Florida. Nothing.
Yeah, like I always try to think of it as how you feel when you have young kids and you've gone through a whole day of travel and you're pulling into a place where you just want to breathe. Like,
Mhm.
are we setting our guests up for that breath, or are we making them huff a few more times and haul back out to Walmart? You know, like that can set the tone for the whole week, and we can choose to do that for them.
How can people get in touch with you?
A lot on Instagram. I have a businessy one that's gather dot and dot host, or the website that I'm working on launching is gatherandhost.info, and it'll connect to all the other stuff.
What is
Or
Gather?
Hospitable Host. You can buy the book on Amazon and read about.
What is Gather and Host?
It is, I've realized that our industry needs the follow through on the creative side to maximize profits and get the most from their investment. I feel like a lot of hosts like get through buying the property and then just kind of piecemeal the rest together. So I'm focusing on branded items like guest books, things that get the experience all the way through, starting with custom artwork and murals. We figured out how to create the artwork once and print it on murals or tapestries, things like that, that bring your local market or your local vibe into the house and help it pop in photos. So when I got into real estate, I became a certified home stager. And, you know, we learn how to set the house up for selling it, but there's very specific things you can do when you're starting from scratch and setting it up to make sure that it gets noticed in the photos. And then phase two is making sure your guests have a fabulous time while they're there. So you're thinking about both of those things from the very beginning. So if you aren't doing the design yourself and thinking this through, then hiring the designer as soon as possible, hiring the photographer as soon as possible, like making sure things are staged. So we're doing artwork all the way through photography and content creation to help hosts get the most money they can, because that is part of the reason we're doing it. Tiny part.
I love it. I want to make sure I keep you on time. I don't want you to be late for your kids. So I'm like watching.
Well, this has been so fun. Oh my gosh, we have been chatting for a while. I didn't even know.
Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I love it. I'll
Janelle.
talk about rental all day, so I'm good.